Hi everyone, I'm out here in my backyard, and what you see here is my Halloween decoration. Halloween's only a few days away, so the days are numbered before this thing turns from decoration into worm food. But for now it's holding up pretty good. You can see a few marks on it here and there where the squirrels have been probably smelling the yummy seeds inside and taking little pot shots at possibly digging into it. Luckily they've not done so yet. But we're not here to look at my pumpkin. The main reason we usually come out into my yard is also not to look at the beautiful autumn leaves, but to feed my outdoor worm bags. So here we are. My outdoor worm bag sits over here. It's just two fabric grow bags nested one within the other, and right next to it is my compost barrel. And what I've got for the worms is right here. It's a variety of some stuff out of my freezer, some stuff that was just kind of going bad here and there. Inside this paper towel is some grit. It's just some pulverized eggshell that I thought I'd include with the feeding today. The feeding they got last time was a few of these. There was a couple melons that had started growing in my garden. This one was still on the plant. The ones they got last time were ones that had fallen off. It wasn't a whole lot, and it was 2 weeks ago, so I think they got 3 or 4 of these. So they're probably due for a little bit of a feeding. Probably doesn't matter so much, because even prior to last feeding they got a whole bunch of straw. Well, it looks like straw, it's really just a bunch of weeds. So we're going to get into this system, get them fed. So let's get started. So I'm curious to see how they did with those. Last week when we were in here and I actually cut one of these open, I thought to myself that I was expecting to see red inside because I thought it might be a watermelon. But then I started noticing these sort of ripply features growing on the skin, and it made me think that, you know, maybe it's cantaloupe melon. I did actually have cantaloupe melon growing in my yard not too long ago. You know, let's get rid of these leaves. They're just kind of in the way. Last time I was expecting a lot of this crabgrass to still be such that I can pull it out in a big wad. But I'm starting to think that at this point it's going to probably be more of a muddy mess if I try to do that. I think we'll be able to just move it aside a little bit like we do sometimes and still be able to get down in here and feed. Last time we were in here there had been a 2-week pause between check-ins, 14 days, and this time too it's been 14 days since we came in here to give them those melons, and it just didn't seem like a whole lot. So it did seem like giving them more soon would be a good idea. So now the one thing that's kind of interesting down in here is that we had, not during the last check-in when they got the melons, but the check-in prior to that, they were fed an unusual forbidden food. One which we did encounter during the last check-in, but then we abruptly just set it aside because it was really stinky. So it was a little bit of chicken, an unusual feeding, one that they usually don't get. None of my worm bins ever get meat, but it was sort of a test. And I remember where I left it, so we can venture down into there briefly, but luckily it's at the very end. So we'll be able to do a little bit of exploring of the previous feedings before we take a peek in there to see if the meat's still getting eaten. And an unusual smell just came out of the bin, which means I might have actually reached it, or at least breached it and let some of its odor out. So I got a feeling the meat's not quite there yet. So we're at the level where these melons that had been put in here as food were put in, and if you look at the seeds too, I think that's pretty telling. Those are cantaloupe seeds, I'm almost certain of it. So besides the cantaloupe, at that same level was some corn cobs, and there must have been a half a dozen of them, if not more. But those two were already leftovers at that point last week. So some of them might be a little bit further along or almost completely eaten at this point. Like that first one we busted open was really fragile. This one here looks like it's still holding up quite nicely. I did try to break some of them apart during the last check-in to see if that would maybe help with the breakdown process. And now we're venturing down into the material right underneath the veggies, which was the crabgrass in which we had the chicken bits. So I'm going to kind of explore here a little bit. Maybe we'll encounter a piece of it, but if we do, if it smells, I'm turning it right back over and we're covering it up. All right, I just inhaled a little bit, mostly through my mouth. I took in a little bit through my nose, and I think I smell something, but it's still kind of tolerable. So we'll just kind of indulge our curiosity here a bit more until we find ourselves unable to continue. But luckily things in here look pretty good. Some of these corn cobs are holding up quite nicely. Kind of slow foods compared to what the melon turned out to be. Was very fast food, not surprising in that. And I think this kind of gooey stuff might be leftovers of the chicken breast that we put in here. I mean, I think it was mostly chicken breast. There might have been a couple other types of this and that there too, and I'm starting to smell the odor. It's really not that terrible, but still, it's not what you expect, because normally in your worm bins you don't expect to smell really much of anything. But I think I just caught a whiff that's telling me it's time to cover up. Yeah, that was pretty foul. Well, I was pushing my luck there, got to admit. And since I just covered it up, I've made it a little bit tolerable again, so just thought we'd kind of till up around this stuff just to loosen it up. If you haven't noticed, it is kind of muddy, a little bit gooey down in here. There was a period of time when a whole bunch of rain was expected, and I left this thing uncovered just to let the rain fall in. So I was concerned that this crabgrass was going in a bit too dry. But at this point, it's probably a good thing that I've got a piece of cardboard that we usually cover up with here, which will have to go back on, except I don't remember where I left it. If we don't finish the video with me covering up with the plywood, then I'll have that as a to-do item at the end to go find it. But you know what? I think it's time to drop in the food we bought for them, and it's quite a bit. So, like I said, what's in the paper towel here is some crushed eggshell. So I ran down to my wormery to not only grab my glove, but to also grab the pulverized eggshell to drop in with today's feeding. We did the same thing last time we were in here. Gave them a little shot of grit. So you can see they're getting some frozen grapes, and they're actually thawing out quite quickly. Figure they're pretty small and they're all individual, separate from each other, so not surprising that they're thawing out pretty quickly. Here's some bread. And the rest of the stuff was not frozen. The rest of the stuff, these tomatoes were starting to get pretty rotten and nasty. Here's that last piece of veggie from my garden. A pepper, starting to get kind of nasty. Ooh, that tomato didn't even hold up to me just touching it. It just burst. Oh, as did that one. And, well, if you've ever fed tomatoes to your worm bins, you'll know that it's a fairly popular item. The worms are going to enjoy that. So we're, once again, not doing anything in terms of supplying the worms with any bedding. I'm wondering if there's dry stuff coming down in here with the food might be a good idea. That driest stuff that was out on the very, very surface, give that stuff a chance at getting broken down a little bit too. Kind of give the whole thing a little bit of a till as long as we're in here, and you know what, let's give them this too. That's the reason I bought this out here, was to not only carry out the grit, but to also be able to give it to them as surplus bedding in the end. So they're not getting much bedding, but it's more than nothing. A little piece of newspaper, a little piece of paper towel. Now I think we can get things covered up again here. So yeah, it's a really nice system. It just seems to plow through anything I give it. I was a little surprised at how nice and quickly this crabgrass has gotten broken down already, because it's only a fraction of what had originally been added. I had taken what to me seemed like maybe 4 or 5 good dense wads of this stuff and kind of created little plugs down in the hole to rest underneath and on top of the foods. As you saw me when I was restoring them, I was trying to use those wads of crabgrass the same way to sort of plug stuff up. And then I guess it's maybe not even so important that we cover this stuff up, cover up with this stuff anymore. Maybe it is just best that it gets blended in with the bedding. Because if we really wanted to cover up with some sort of a nice natural material, we're surrounded with some awesome, beautiful autumn leaves. Oop, I kept bumping into something over here on the side. It was a slug. I was wondering to myself, what in the heck, what is it that I keep bumping into? And it was a slug, so I just evicted him from the edge of my system here. So yeah, why don't we use a little bit of top covering that's, you know, suitable for the season. if we had come in here a few days earlier, you would see much more vivid colors. I couldn't resist taking a photograph and posting it in the community tab of my channel. So if you're not doing anything and you got a minute to spare, head over there and take a look. But I think we're gonna leave the video at that. I'll have to go up and go find the covering that usually rests out on top of here. It's just a piece of plywood with some fancy paint on it, but I don't want to prolong the end of the video with me having to go fetch that thing, find where it is. I think I know where it is, but for all intents and purposes, the video is over. So hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always very much appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye.